And, whenever I study psychology, a lot of what's happening around me in the world and why, and it always comes down to money and power. Everything comes down to money and power. And I think in America and Western civilization, that fact is hidden from us. We don't, we have this optimistic view of the world and the fight for freedom and free choice and free will. And it doesn't exist the way that people are raised to think it does in Western culture.
Warning, this video is for educational, entertainment purposes only. This is not medical or legal advice. Don't do anything we do without doctor's supervision.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of MC Stories podcast. This podcast is with my most frequent host, Dr. Tony Hughes. Hi, Tony.
Hey, Mario.
So what I want to discuss today with you is what's the situation in Thailand right now with this whole virus thing?
Well, they say that there's pretty much no COVID in Thailand. There's only been something like 56 deaths in the last year from COVID. And there was almost 139 deaths just in the previous weekend from motor accidents. So there's almost only 1/3 of the amount of deaths from COVID over an entire year as a single weekend of motor accidents. So the death from COVID is complete. I mean, there's less death from COVID than there is the flu. What's interesting is that Thailand didn't really try to sensationalize it in the media too much. It's a military dictatorship. It's not like an American where you have the two-party system and, there's a lot of, it takes a long time to push legislation through and everything like that. So they can move very quickly. And in America, they create an illusion of democracy when really it's more like it's closer to a communist regime. And so in order to manipulate the people, they have to use the media to brainwash people in America. It's the same thing in China and North Korea. The difference is in America, they have more technology. The brainwashing is very advanced through the media and everything else, and psychological manipulation. And in Thailand, it's very simple. It's like you either do, if you rebel, you could get assassinated or imprisoned for life, or the punishment can be very severe, and they're very open about that. It's not like in America where they have to pretend that everybody has the right to choose. And so the point of all that is there was not as much of a need to sensationalize it in Thailand to make it a bigger deal than it was. And so it didn't become a bigger deal. And in America, where you have, the media decides what people think about things, what they want people to think about things. So if they turn your attention to the current situation as a way to scare people to give up their freedoms so the government can gain more control, then that's what they do. They do it through manipulation. So it's just two completely different systems of manipulating people, but it's all the same psychology of powerful people trying to control less powerful people.
I think Slovakia is pretty close to United States in this, because here it's democracy, but as you said, it's like fake democracy where we have to test like every week. Right now it's December and they're making fun of it because in Slovakia it's like you have like 4 candles, and every Sunday you light one of the candles, and the last Sunday before the Christmas is the last candle, the 4th. And right now we have to test every weekend, and they're calling it like the Advent testing, because Advent is called the 4 candles, you light up. So it's like we have to test every week, and without the negative test, you can't even go to supermarket, you can go to work or your company basically, and you have to pay medical and medical fees and all the taxes and everything. So which of course your either company or your working staff pays for you, so you have to pay it yourself, because they say that you could go to work if you would have negative test. So it's basically you can't do anything without a test. It's crazy.
See, if I say if 70% of the population wanted this type of testing and this type of new lifestyle and new normal, I'd say, okay, if this is what people want, then as long as they have all the facts to make the decision. But the problem is the censorship on all of the actual factual information is so heavy. Very few people actually have all the information to make the decision. You're only hearing one side. Everybody's only hearing one side of the story. And you'd think that people would be curious enough to dig a little bit deeper and ask the right questions, but people are generally not. I mean, there's a reason why, some people are, let's say everybody's trying to make money. Some people go the extra mile and make millions of dollars, and some people stay very poor their entire life. Well, it's the same thing with information. There's only a few people, there's a very small amount of the population actually really digs in and learns and educates themselves. And the rest of the masses go along with whatever the mainstream is doing and whatever they're told to do. So unfortunately, what's happening now is they're actually, with the media, is actually making it seem like there's even more people in favor of a communist new world order. And it's really, I know very few people who are actually okay with what's going on, but the media is making it sound like there's more people okay with it than there are. And they hire Hollywood actors and they hire influencers and they buy politicians, all of this to make it seem like this is all inevitable, that people have no choice, that it's a good thing, that it's in the best interest of the individual and humanity. And really, none of that's true. It all 100% comes down to money. It has nothing to do with health. It has nothing to do with benefiting human advancement and human population. And whenever I study psychology, a lot of what's happening around me in the world and why, and it always comes down to money and power. Everything comes down to money and power. And I think in America and Western civilization, that fact is hidden from us. We don't we have this optimistic view of the world and the fight for freedom and free choice and free will, and it doesn't exist the way that people are raised to think it does in Western culture.
Yeah. And you know what actually gets me the most? It's the fact that here in Slovakia, it's like everyone can see through the matrix, because it's like right here, it's not like professional, like they can hide it really good, but actually government pays a lot of people, and they like post stuff on Facebook and caps letters, and it's like, this is not paid, this is not actor. And there's like a 17-year-old, and she's like, I'm dying, I can't breathe, I have it for 6 months and I can get rid of it. And then people comment it, and they say like, oh, like this is so fake, oh, this looks so unprofessional, this is staged and stuff. And they get deleted the comments, and people see it in real time, like they delete the comments and stuff. The government, because let's be honest, government here is like, it looks like Slovakia isn't such of a big country that is like so professional, and it's like it's so see-through, but people still believe it even through this.
Well, the politicians are getting really rich right now. Well, they're not incentivized just by money and power. They're incentivized also by not losing something. So the way the U.S. government works is it through the the Homeland Security and the National Security Administration, all these other agencies. It gathers information on everybody. And then if you cross the system too far, then that's used to destroy your life in every possible way as justification for asset seizures, censorship, criminal prosecution, blocking all your bank accounts, even just going straight to the institutions. A lot of the same stuff that happened to me is what I experienced when basically the US government and some other special interests came after me. I experienced what happens when you actually try to get out of the matrix. And well, no, when you try to get other people out of the matrix. So you yourself can get out of the matrix. But if you start telling other people how to get out of the matrix, that's when they come for you. And that's to prevent you from, leading the sheep out of the corral of control. And Western civilization and also China and Russia really don't want people to know what it feels like or even understand freedom, the same way North Korea doesn't. Because once they feel freedom, there's something psychologically where we'll fight so much harder to prevent losing something than we will to gain something. So if we actually experience true freedom, then it's harder to take it away from us. And that's sort of one of the many psychological approaches being used. So it's just really important when it comes to bodybuilding chemistry or politics or anything else to be mindful of what influences are controlling our decision making. Is it our own mind making our decision, or are we being programmed like a computer to make a decision that someone else wants us to make? And that's what Enhanced Athlete and I and Pioneering Human Evolution and the Friends of Freedom thing is all about. Is I believe, and people like yourself and our whole community believe, but we would like more people to understand this and get the word out more, but it can't because it gets censored. We would like more people to have more access to more information to make their own informed decisions. That's exactly what the governments don't want.
How can people that are listening to this and aren't part of Enhanced Athlete, how can they reach you the best way?
So there's Instagram, Dr.Tony Hughes. There's Snapchat and Facebook and all these things. But yeah, to reach me directly, I just people who are persistent like you, you're able to get through to me. So anybody can get through to me. They just have to maybe try a few different places. I try to respond to as many Instagram messages as possible, but there's a lot. And then EA Inner Circle is like a coaching community for bodybuilding and life enhancement chemistry. So I participate a lot in that to give direct content to people and answer questions as well.
Yeah, Inner Circle is amazing. It's like so much content, so much information there, like you can get it anywhere else, from the bodybuilding underground chemistry and body enhancing stuff.
Yep. And more stuff added all the time. Like it's just constant. It's never a completed project. It's just constantly adding more content, and a lot of content that I've already recorded for the current transformations that haven't been published yet. So that'll come out soon.
Yeah. You know what? I wanted to tell you what happened a few days ago. Right now, like it's forbidden to go to hospital to visit somebody. If you have like a family member or someone, even if he's in tough state, you can't visit him because it's forbidden. And one politician, big politician here, is in hospital because he had a car accident. And every night at like 2 a.m., hosts come to his room, like every time, like minimum of 2 women. And he was telling the nurses that they didn't want to prepare them tea, like they couldn't get hot tea. It's like the woman can go to politician every night, he's a big sexual addict and women can go to him every night, but you can't visit the family member because it's forbidden. It's like the politicians they're making fun of it. They're like making fun of people.
Yeah, exactly, because the politicians know that this whole thing is a complete hoax, because they have enough insider information to know. So they've got to wear a mask in public and pretend that they're following their own rules, but behind closed doors, they're not following any of the rules, and they don't care because they know it's a complete hoax. And there's plenty of cures for the situation here, that if you're a politician, you have the insider information to use. I mean, not everybody does. Look, some very famous wealthy people, they die of diseases that were curable just because they're stubborn, or maybe they listen to one doctor who doesn't know what he's doing, right? But generally, by and large, wealthy, intelligent people, especially the ones that use the government to prevent other people from reaching their level. So you've got people above the government, and let's just say that includes politicians, sort of. They're kind of in limbo. They're part of government also. We have special interest politicians, the government, and the rest of people. And the whole purpose of the system is to push people down, so that the special interest can create greater monopolies for more money and more power. That's how it works everywhere. So yes, the politicians and the elite people, they don't wear masks, they don't social distance, they don't worry about any of this stuff because they know what pills to take if they catch it, and they're definitely not going to be getting the vaccines. That's for sure. I mean, this is what's funny is Bill Gates. I guarantee you he wouldn't have his children take any of the vaccines that he promotes, or eat any of the food that he promotes, or anything like that. And I'm sure if you look at the actual people in control and their families and how they live their life, it's completely opposite of what they're trying to force on the rest of the world to keep them suppressed.
Big thing that happened here as well, like 2 or 3 days ago, the prime minister here, everyone said like, you should take the vaccine first. And he, in big interview on TV, he said, me and my family are gonna take the vaccine last because we care about our lives. So we're gonna give you the vaccine first, and we're gonna be the last.
None of the politicians are going to get the vaccines. They will all have some sort of document fraudulently created, or they will, if there's a tracking system put into the vaccine, like they're suggesting in the future, they'll have the tracking system put in without the vaccine. It's just that, I mean, that's the benefit of being the wealthy, the powerful, the elite, is that you don't have to subject yourself to the things that are used to suppress the rest of the population.
What are your thoughts about the political elections in United States?
Well, it's predictable, because when it all comes down to money and power, Trump has a lot of money and he has some power, but he has nothing compared to, let's say, China, for example. And from everything I've seen, it seems pretty obvious that China is backing the Democrat Party in the United States. And the trade-offs is that America will give a lot of favors to China to help China grow its power and influence. America is also going to learn from China on how to implement communism in the way that keeps the most control over its citizens. So I think that trade-off is what's happening between America and China, the Democratic Party in America. So to me, I think Trump is no match for China. But he's shocked and surprised me so many times in the past where I thought there's no way Trump could win in a certain situation or thing that he was taking on, and he did, which is amazing. But you have basically David versus Goliath. Trump is like this one lone man against trillions of dollars of special interests. And unfortunately, there's less educated people who embrace freedom than there are slaves and sheep that need to be told what to do and believe their government and just are content being robots because they know nothing different. And the Democratic Party in America has really targeted that population, and completely, to the point of completely alienating anybody who's educated or has any critical thinking skills. But the manipulation is amazing. Like I could predict this, because on social media, if you post anything in favor of the Democrat Party or communism or socialism or basically anything that's the destruction of America, then you're going to get more views for it. But if you post something that embraces freedom or the Constitution or critical thinking or getting people to think outside the box, then you get censored. So, let's say there's a section of the population who's just going to fight for freedom all the way, no matter what. There's a section of the population who's going to fight for communism, no matter what. And there's a lot of people in between too. So it's that fight for the in-between people. And the freedom fighters don't care if they alienate the extremists, and the Democrats or communists don't care if they alienate the freedom fighters. It's that battle for the middle people. But the minds of the middle people have been being prepared for this for so long. And it's not just the Democratic Party. I should clarify. There's the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and then there's Trump. Trump's practically like an independent. Even from my insider connections that I hear from, even the Republican Party doesn't have full control over Trump. They sure there's some control. I'm sure there's some sort of elements of blackmail going on, as there always is in politics and things like that. But from what I've heard, Trump really does what he feels is right, which never happens in politics. I mean, America, every political opinion is bought and paid for. And you're naive to think if it isn't, even at the smaller levels of politics. So I was disappointed that he didn't do well, but it's kind of in the election, but it's kind of predictable. Do I think there's election fraud? Absolutely. I think there always was election fraud. I think it was obvious a long time ago, and I'm surprised it was never addressed earlier. It's good that it's being addressed now, but even if there was election fraud, just the fact that if even 40% of the population voted for the Democratic Party, especially someone who's completely senile and a pure puppet for special interests and a communist vice president, I kind of lose hope for humanity. But this is one of the reasons I left the United States. I influenced as many people as much as I could to embrace freedom. I tried to show them a higher quality of life. I did. I converted maybe 100,000 people around the world to shift their opinion towards embracing freedom more. And a lot of people have even moved to Thailand, like you're discussing too. Like I run into people all the time that moved to Thailand because of because I showed them what it could be like. I guess I showed them another world that got them curious enough to come experience it themselves. And that's the biggest risk, is like you do have people around the world living very high quality lives who don't have any problems with viruses or diseases or anything, who know how to navigate the financial system, and all of that information is stuff that the special interests and the government doesn't want people to know, like I said, on a large scale. Because if people really knew what was going on, everybody would be rioting. I mean, it would just be like people would demand a complete overhaul of the system, to go back to the Constitution, actually, because that is the most brilliant document that I've ever heard of in political history. I mean, I'm sure there's other brilliant ones as well, but the Constitution, we really take it for granted. It is absolutely brilliant, and they did forecast, they did think ahead really far in the future when they were writing it. But then again, it was all based on human psychology. They experienced the same thing that we're experiencing now was many times throughout history. With the English based taxation without representation, I guess is the best summary of it, of the United States, just pulling resources from the U.S. and not providing the services in exchange. Yeah, but it all comes back to like control, the monopolies controlling everything. And if the monopolies, and going forward too, unfortunately, I don't know if we'll ever have an independent Republican that isn't also bought and paid for by special interests. And the tech companies are so powerful that basically the tech companies, Twitter, Google, Microsoft, they're all good, Facebook, they're all going to own all the politicians because it costs them nothing. It's a drop in the bucket for them. So why not buy the politicians? And if they buy the politicians, then that's how they maintain control, because the tech companies and certain special interests that will always remain anonymous are going to become the most powerful entities in the world. And it's very scary because if you look at how the tech companies abuse their power by censoring obviously actual factual information and personal accounts of things in favor of political jargon and stuff that doesn't even make sense, that they force down our throat, information that anybody who has any level of critical thinking or logic would see right through it. And they're forcing that misinformation down our throat, and it's the tech companies that's doing that, and they're doing it blatantly, like they're not even trying to hide it anymore. That's true power. So it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out. My strategy is just to stay. America still controls a lot of the world as far as through the media and influence. And that's why it's ground zero for most special interests to use the American government for influencing the rest of the world, like Slovakia, actually. Because imagine if America was just like, hey, it's not a problem. Like, very small percentage are going to die, but we also have these treatments, alternative treatments that work fine. They can use that, and there never needed to be any lockdowns, any face masks, anything. None of it was required. But by scaring the rest of the world with all the misinformation and the fake numbers and all the false information, that's how these special interests that want to lock down every country and exert control and buy up all the politicians, how they're approaching it.
Yeah, I think if everyone would take vitamin D3 or calcitriol and hydroxychloroquine and some essential vitamins, I think everyone would be safe and just get their immune system known to it, and nothing, any of these restrictions wouldn't be needed. It's crazy.
Yeah, Mario. Whenever I talk about this stuff, I should mention like what's my point of reference and what facts do I base all of these things on. So yes, I do have insider information sometimes, but then I can't exactly say what it is or where it came from. But most of what I feel about all of this stuff comes from just understanding human psychology as a lawyer, as a student of history, as a person who's intelligent and asks questions, going through life and learning how the world works and traveling around the world. And then you learn, it's sort of like learning a language. And David Icke learned this language. That's why David Icke and a lot of these other brilliant minds of our time, I know he's a little crazy, but that's how these brilliant minds of our time are able to predict all of these things that are happening and going to happen, because it's all like obvious, because you can put yourself in their situation. So if you have your own desires and goals, but if your desire and goal was world domination and complete control and money and power, then you think, okay, what would I do? What would I do? What would I do? And that's how you find all the answers. So like you could take the current state of what's going on in the world right now, and if you've traveled around and you understand what the different players' goals are and you understand human psychology, then you can just follow the path. It's like a path. It's like an obvious path. And you could just guess like, okay, maybe they would do this, maybe do this, that. And then 6 months later, you look back and they did all of those things, because of course that's what you would do in that situation too. Just like it's like running a business. It's the world power monopolies are just running a business, and there's certain psychology to business and there's certain ways to approach it to be successful, and they do all of those things.
Yeah, it's crazy right now. It's exactly, and I can get like people can't think about it like this. It's like I can't understand how it's possible.
Well, here in Thailand, obviously if someone has found Thailand and they moved here, they've it's a very smart decision for quality of life for most people. And it's also requires sort of leaving your comfort zone and leaving something that you know and grew up with to come to a foreign country and live in. And so here you have probably 95% of people that moved here to get more freedom are all 100% on board with the freedom fight, 100% on board with Trump. Very, anti-communism, especially when they come from countries like yours. I have another Slovakian friend, so
Yeah,
from what
Joseph.
I understand, your country is going pretty hardcore towards communism. And it's funny because the rest of the world says, "Oh, look, England is moving towards closer to communism, and this other European country is moving closer to communism, and Italy's going closer to communism." But when I go to these countries, I see it and I feel it, and everything just brings you down. It's a feeling. It's almost a feeling of negativity in the air, of loss of individuality, of loss of freedom, of being forced to conform, but not blatantly, just like that subtle negative influence to pull you down. And then I come to Thailand, or there's a number of other countries like Mexico that embrace freedom, and you just feel like you're lifted up. You just feel good. You feel free. You feel like you can do what you want. Your creativity starts working. Your mind starts getting out of the matrix. So that's a big piece of advice I give to everybody, which is harder to take action on when there's lockdowns and travel restrictions, but is to get out of your comfort zone, get out of your bubble, and get out of the matrix and get somewhere that challenges you to question all of your beliefs so you can find out who you really are and what you really want. And it's funny because older people, like someone like 45 years old, they think they know this, but they don't. In fact, they're even more stubborn and more set in their ways because of the way the brain, just by way of analogy, is like plastic, right? And it's like soft and malleable like dough. And you can shape your brain when you're younger, and when you get older, it gets harder and stubborn and rigid. And so you have all these older people thinking that they know how everything works, and they don't. And it's going to be harder for them to learn. So you have to wake them up. They have to have an epiphany. And that's what I was doing with my videos in the beginning with the DMP Diaries and Enhanced Athlete. Was my number one goal was to give people that epiphany. So I would take a drug that let's say the FDA was lying to people about and sensationalizing and not giving them the full truth. Not just the FDA, a whole bunch of other interests that are threatened by things that compete with them, and show people that everything they've read about it was wrong. I'm actually taking it. I'm showing you everything I'm doing and the exact results with lab work and everything. And then other people start taking it and they start communicating with themselves like, oh my gosh, how is this possible? This information's been hidden from us this whole time. This is a game changer. I cured this disease, this disease, this disease, this disease. And it starts spreading. Even doctors start recommending under the table to their clients, if they're good doctors, and there's very few good doctors that will actually put their license on the line to actually save someone. Usually their license comes first. Same thing with lawyers, any professional career. It's one of the ways that governments, especially a bureaucratic government like America, keeps control of the people, is that in order to have your career, your life, everything, you have a license, and the government can take your license away so easy for anything. They can threaten, for example, if a doctor goes and recommends hydroxychloroquine, the medical board will call them up and say, hey, you have to recount that. You have to, say you were wrong. You have to say you were lying. You have to delete those videos, or we're going to take your medical license. And that happens all the time. And it's not always direct, like from the direct medical board. It's oftentimes it's indirect. I mean, I could talk for days about this. I'll try to keep it short and then conclude that. It's oftentimes other people within the system using the system to exploit their gain, but the system is built with that intent. So laws are drafted in the United States. Oh my gosh, Mike's here waiting downstairs. The way that all the laws are drafted is by usually lobbyists and special interest groups actually writing the law and then paying politicians to sign off on it. Not actually paying cash. It's more complicated how they transfer money than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's Mario, let's wrap it up quick. All right, let's pause. Can we pause?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'm gonna go let Mike in and I'll come back.
Okay. I can't hear you. I don't know if the headphones have microphone or something. You don't have sound, Tony. Microphone. Okay.
Okay, I was saying Mike's here because we're gonna after
Hey,
the
Mike.
call we're gonna go over. So we got Mike and Hottie Alert.
Mike's part of your transformations.
Yeah, with Mike we did the mass blast transformation, like the 1 week blast, using all the anabolic matrix theories, and then now we're gonna pick a few muscle groups and really try to build those specific muscle groups using IGF-DES and some, focused training on those muscle groups and strategizing the supplements around those muscle groups, basically.
Yeah, these transformations are amazing, and the protocols that are in the EA inner circle, it's amazing. Like, how many pounds of muscle can you put on in like a week?
I think one of the more impressive ones was Ken, and he put about 15 pounds of lean mass that he kept
It's
in
like
1
7
week.
kilos.
Yeah, and he lost about 2 pounds of fat. So, he gained 22 or 24 pounds total in 1 week. So that's like 3 pounds a day. But a lot of that's water. So, it's basically you put on like 65% muscle and 35% water, and then you lose the water afterwards. Yeah, and it works good. It works really good. People build a ton of muscle in a short period of time to the point where you realize you don't need to do like a 6-month cycle to build muscle. You can do it in a very short burst and then just maintain it after that.
How do you maintain it on TRT?
Yeah, you have to take something, because if you just go back to natty, we say it's permanent muscle because it's more permanent than if you just train natural. But if you don't have the androgens there to support the increased muscle and the extra calories, everything's temporary, right? Nothing's really permanent. So it's just like if you stop working out, what happens? You start losing muscle. So same thing, if you stop supplying androgens to the muscle, yes, they're going to shrink. Not go away, not disappear, but I'll just give you a quick example, because you said TRT, and that's usually 150 milligrams of testosterone up
Like
to
a
200
higher dose of
milligrams.
TRT, like 250,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, the more muscle mass someone has, the more testosterone or replacement of testosterone you need to sustain that amount of muscle. So, for example, I've seen some pretty good sized bodybuilders that they're not running cycles anymore. They just run 400 milligrams of testosterone just to maintain. They're not going to gain any more muscle off that. It's not enough to gain muscle if you have a lot of muscle, but it's enough to maintain the muscle. If they drop to 200, they would lose muscle. So it's kind of it's high maintenance. We're talking big guys though, right? Not many people get that big. The more muscle you have, the harder it is to maintain. But that's like anything. The more money you have, it becomes hard to maintain. There's more opportunities to lose it. It's more work to maintain it, right? The bigger the house you have, the more maintenance there is. It's all the same thing. So it's not a negative thing. It's just the physics of it.
What's the biggest drawback of the transformation? Do you think that food is the biggest drawback, the amount of food you have to eat?
Yeah, let's use the word limiting factor. Food is usually the limiting factor. The biggest drawback would be that you have no energy, you don't like working out anymore, you're tired of it. Like pretty much most people after the blast transformation, they don't want to bodybuild anymore. They want a nice long break. But then it's tough because you got to keep pushing if you want to maintain it to really solidify it. So it does have its challenges.
And the limiting factor is the amount of food you have to eat. Like, for example, how much food do people on these transformations eat?
So Ken, I'm not able to eat wheat. It messes up my stomach, but wheat is an easy way to get a lot of calories. So Ken doesn't have any problem digesting wheat. So he was eating a couple loaves of bread per day. That was like an easy way for him to get a ton of carbs in, for example. But the main thing is you just can't have large gaps of time without eating, because if you want to try to hit 10,000 calories, it's like impossible to do that in a few hours. And it's really hard to do that in 10 hours. And if you spread it out over 24 hours, it's doable. Like, it's still hard because we're talking about fairly clean food. It's still hard, and we still benefit from liquefying food and doing things like smoothies to get more calories in, but you can do it. But now let's say you go to the gym and then you didn't bring food with you, and you run some other errand, and you've got this block of time where you didn't get enough calories in. It's hard to catch up. That's how you fall behind.
Yeah. And what's the sleep like? Like, how many hours do people sleep on these transformations? And how do they recover?
So this is another challenge. Is for some people it becomes harder to sleep because their heart rate is increased from overtraining, because their heart is also working harder to pump more blood through more muscle tissue and water, and your body's sore, and you're, with the food regimen and getting up and going to the bathroom. So sleep is more difficult, but it's also more important. Now, it does also, the GH and the IGF also and insulin make you tired. So it actually makes you want to sleep. So pretty much during the transformations, people only want to eat, sleep, and I was going to say get a massage. So that's what I like to do. But eat, sleep, and train. Eat, sleep, train. Eat, sleep, train. That's all it is all day. Eat, sleep, train. And I try to do the transformations along with the subjects. But man, it's hard for me because I just have so many things going on. I always get interrupted. It's hard to dedicate like a full week. I'll do it for a couple days, and man, even just a couple days makes a huge difference. And then I'll kind of taper. Like, my intensity or my ability to follow the regimen is like perfect day 1, day 2 is pretty good, day 3 drops, and it just keeps dropping from that. But even with that, every time I do a blast, that's when I put on new muscle. I don't put on any new muscle in between. In between is just maintenance. I mean, because what happens is when you blast and you create a new set point of muscle, now it takes even more to get to the next level. Each level gets more and more challenging. So I'm at a point where I don't really, I either have two choices. I could either like train and diet perfectly every day and see some progress in like a month or 2, 3 months, or I can just do another blast and then just kind of maintain and live my lifestyle, which I don't have to be obsessed about the bodybuilding thing in between, which I prefer.
Yeah. Someone would argue that it's unhealthy to put this amount of muscle like so fast, but I think it's even more healthy because then you get then you lower the androgens and you stay on the higher dose of TRT and your organs get back to work. And what do you think? It's more healthy to do this kind of blast or to run a longer cycle?
Yeah, since you said it's less healthy to put on muscle this fast, it's a big challenge to the body to put on muscle fast and maintain muscle. So it's going to be just as much of a burden on the body in the long term to carry an extra 30 pounds of muscle, whether it was built in 6 months or it was built in 1 week. So that part is just increased muscle mass is harder on the health, period. You're trading quality of life for length of life. And I'm willing to make that trade. All bodybuilders are willing to make that trade, right? But to a certain point, because if you weigh 80 kilos, and depending on your height or whatever, if you put on 10 pounds or 10 kilos of muscle to 90 kilos, you'll actually be healthier and live longer for sure, right? But if you go from 90 to 100, 100 to 110, now you're decreasing your maybe even quality of life, but you're definitely decreasing your length of life. So there's a sweet spot for everybody. I'm over my sweet spot, right? So I like doing it faster though, because a lot of the side effects from steroids, and I think you're going to see this more in the future. I think I'm ahead of my time on this because I see newer studies coming out about like long-term usage of side effects of steroids. So if someone's on a steroid for a year trying to make gains, because this is quite common, the side effects of that steroid are going to accumulate over time. But if we blast it for 1 week, the side effects just don't have time to accumulate. See, hold on. Sorry, it bounced to another call. See, the steroid side effects, there's not a lot of short-term side effects that become long-term side effects. It's mostly either short-term side effects or long-term side effects. Um, if but if someone were to do a longer cycle and they get like a short-term side effect and that side effect stays with them a long time, let's say like gyno, for example, and they're constantly like getting a little bit of gyno, it's going to build over time. But if we blast it in 1 week, the gyno doesn't have enough time to grow and accumulate. By the end of a week is roughly when it does. That's what we notice. That's why we try to keep the transformation short. When we did the 30-day transformation with a blast like this, it's a little too long, I think. So we always experiment with different times. Like Ken did 3 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on. Or 3 on, 1 off, 3 on, 1 off approach. That worked really well. That was, I think, the best protocol as far as time on, time off. And then after that is just maintain the muscle that he already gained.
What do you think about the quality of the muscle? Because someone says if you put muscle too fast, it doesn't get as grainy. And if you put it on slowly, it gets more grainy and more conditioned. It's a myth, or what do you think?
I say get the size and then work on the graininess. So you can do both at different times. I mean, Guru Amin had a good theory that, he was looking at Dallas McCarver's muscle and he's like, that muscle is never going to look like grainy, and because he grew too big too fast. But I think he could have gotten it. I think he would have gotten that look. He just needed more years, So I think he was focused on size, not on building that, because it's a different type of training. It's a different type of supplements and drugs to get the grainy look than it is to get the big look. So I say use the week to get the big look, and then while we're maintaining that muscle, use that to get the muscle maturity and the definition afterwards.
Yeah. Thanks, Tony. I'm looking forward to another episodes with you on a frequent basis. Do you want to say anything to the listeners?
Just be swell and swole, friends of freedom,
Pioneers
pioneers of human evolution.
Yeah. Thank you, Tony, for another episode. Bye.